Well, hello everyone. Happy Monday to you. I guess you're watching what's going on in the United States of America. Today, let's talk about Islam. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the beginning of the last days. My name is Laura-Lynn Thompson, and as usual, we will begin with a reading from my favorite dads, my only dad except for my father in heaven, my dad, David Freeman. He left me a treasure, and this treasure is marked from the front cover to the back cover. And they were missionaries in Uganda, East Africa, where I was born. So of course I am African, Canadian, American, being a dual citizen. And I take great pride in that. So I appreciate that my dad left so much for me to look at, what he thought was important. So I read to you today, I kind of opened it up, and right there at Psalm 68 is this scripture, and it says, Psalm 68:34, it says, "Ascribe ye strength unto God. His excellency is over Israel, and his strength is in the clouds." Amen. So you know that cloud where you store all your pictures and stuff? God's strength is right there. Clouds mean different things to us these days, don't they? I'm excited to bring on our guest today. We've actually had him before, and because of the excellent information that he gave last time, I wanted to bring him back because I've had some personal tremendous issues dealing with this issue of Islam, radical Islam, what Islam means, how it affects us here in Canada, how it affects our daily lives and our future and the future of our grandchildren. And because of Reverend Dr. J. Smith's words last time, I used some of his information to speak to an Islamic friend of mine, and it brought up even more questions. And I thought, if I have those questions, I'm sure that you do as well. So I'd like to invite him to the show. Let me tell you a bit about him. He is an American Christian evangelist. In 1981, while studying for his master's, Smith attended a seminar on Islam, while noting that there were only 1,500 Christians ministering to Muslims worldwide. Wow. So that's in 81. He decided to become a missionary to the Muslim world and pursued a second master's degree in Islamic studies from Fuller Theological Seminary. Since 1983, he has been a full-time missionary with the Brethren in Christ Church with focus on apologetics and polemics, among the Muslims of London. In 2010, Smith resumed work on his PhD at the Melbourne School of Theology, which he completed in March 2017. And he has just, how many videos? 4,900. 4,900? Over 900. Over 900 videos that talk about this very important issue and would give you all kinds of information on what you need to know. And so, Reverend Dr. J. Smith, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Laura-Lynn. It's good to be and good to see you again.
Thank you so much. So I appreciate what you teach us and the courage with which it takes to actually talk about this. Do you know, here in British Columbia, in Chilliwack, a woman was recently arrested on August 7th for racism. And they will not tell us what she said. Apparently it was against the Asian community. But I often find myself, when I'm speaking openly in my concerns regarding Islam, the truth of Islam, what is truly believed, and spoken of, I sometimes can get labeled as a racist, and which is not true at all. I actually marched in the 1 Million March with some very prominent Islamic people here in Canada, and it was because of that. It was before October 7th, and then October 7th happened, and then I found out that they weren't really against Hezbollah and Hamas, and that led to a very difficult situation that we've been dealing with. So that's a lot of conversations. One of the things that I found very staggering was to find out that they did not, most Islamic people, and I guess Muslims, I want to confirm this with you, do not believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. They don't ascribe to that, or that he died on a cross. What do you know about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's very much one of the primary difficulties between Islam and Christianity is what they think about Jesus Christ. And of course, it's not just that they deny the crucifixion. That's in chapter 4, verse 157. It's right there in the Quran. They have to deny it. It says, for they crucified him not, they killed him not. They thought it was so. Another was given his image. So another person died on the cross. Someone did die that day, but it wasn't Jesus. And the reason why is the traditions say it very clearly is because Allah cannot allow one of his greatest prophets, second only to Muhammad, to die such an ignoble death, because that shows that Allah is weak, that he is not able to defend his own prophets. So that's why Muslims deny the crucifixion. But it's much more than that. They don't just deny the crucifixion. They do not deny his divinity. They deny the Trinity. They confront the Trinity in chapter 5, verse 116 of the Quran. They deny his divinity in chapter 4, verse 171. There's verse after verse after verse after verse in the Quran that confronts his divinity and the Trinity.
Wow. So they love to say, no, we're just like you. We love Jesus. We love Jesus. We honor Jesus. He was a great prophet. And I have found myself saying, but he claimed to be the Son of God. So do you deny that?
Yeah. And so there's the problem right there. They love Jesus, but the Jesus they love is not Jesus. He's Isa. Isa is the Islamic Jesus. And even the name is the wrong name. That's not his Arabic name, which is tragic because whoever wrote the Quran should have at least known in Arabic that his name is Yeshua. Yeshua is like Yeshua in Hebrew. It's the same root. It's the same name. So not only do they have the wrong name, they have the wrong Jesus. And the Jesus that they love is not the biblical Jesus. It's not Yeshua. It's Isa. And look at who Isa is. Isa is a child who in the cradle speaks from the cradle. That's not my Jesus. Here in chapter 3, verse 40, that's in chapter 3, verse 46 of the Quran. In chapter 3, verse 49, 3 verses later, this child takes some clay and molds it like birds, blows on it, and it flies up into the air. Now, I don't remember Jesus ever doing that. So these things that this Isa does is not the Jesus I know. And then as an adult, he denies his divinity, certainly in chapter 5, verse 116, confusing Mary as part of the Trinity, but denies that he and his mother are to be worshipped as God. What in the world? What Jesus is that talking about? And most heinously, this Isa then refuses to get on the cross and lets another man die in his place, which damns all of us to eternity. So I have nothing to do with that Isa. I want nothing to do with the Islamic Isa. So when Muslims come up to me and say, we love Jesus, say, no, you don't love Jesus. You know nothing about him. You love Isa. That's the wrong Jesus. Come on home. Get a better Jesus. His name is Yeshua in Arabic, or Jesus in English.
That's so fascinating. And this is so good. So I believe that as Christians, we should have more of these conversations with Muslims, even though they're very difficult. My talks with my Islamic friend are virtually at a very difficult place, but not, I tell him these things and then he goes, no. He tells me I've got it all wrong. And then I say, no, actually, you've got it wrong. And and I said, I actually do find it a bit offensive that you don't honor the Jesus, which is the Jesus of the Christian faith. I guess Muhammad. I mean, who came up with this alternate version of Jesus?
Well, I'm gonna tread on some toes now. What I'm gonna say next, and this is where polemics comes in. The word polemics means to go on the offense. Apologetics is defense. That's what we've just been doing. Now we're going to go on the offense. So when you ask who came up with this, it had nothing to do with a man named Muhammad. In fact, there is no one named Muhammad in the 7th century. Now, I probably stepped on lots of toes in saying that. But I'm not just saying it ex nihilo. This is something we can now prove by going back to the 7th century. So we know that whoever put the Quran together was not someone named Muhammad. In fact, there is no Muhammad who's living in a place called Mecca in Medina in the Hijaz, that central part of Arabia, in the 7th century, because there's no Mecca in the 7th century. If there's no Mecca, what Muhammad are they talking about? Well, first of all, the word Muhammad requires 3 vowels. U, that's the Dhamma and the Fatha. That's the U, Ah, and Ahs. Take those three vowels out because there were no vowels in Arabic that early, not in the 7th century. So what are we putting those three vowels there for? Just leave the four letters that remain. Mim, Ha, Mim, Dal, which is MHMD. And what do you get? Muhammad. Muhammad. Now, there are plenty of Muhammads in the 7th century, and I could give you one reference after another. In fact, the Muhammad is what the Jews had. The Muhammad is what the Christians had. This is the anointed one. It's not a name, it's a title. It's the anointed one referring to Jesus Christ himself. He is the Muhammad, the anointed one in Arabic, also in Aramaic. He is the Muhammad that the Jews are still waiting for, the Messiah. That's in Hebrew. So you can see the Muhammad is right through our Old Testament. Song of Solomon 5:16. The Altogether Lovely. That's the title for Solomon at that time. That's the Muhammad. So the Muhammad is very well known in Judaism and in Christianity. We know about the Muhammad, but not Muhammad. That was introduced in the 8th and 9th century, much, much later, when they finally got around to creating those three vowels. They needed those three vowels, two of which are in that name. So that's why it's an Abbasid. It's an Abbasid creation, this person named Muhammad. So who put the Quran together? Who wrote these verses? That's the million-dollar question. We're not going to answer that today. But that's what we need to at some time, and that's what we're working on right now. And we pretty well know where the Quran came from. We know where these verses came from. We know where these attacks against the divinity of Jesus and these attacks against the Trinity and certainly against his sonship. We now know where they came from, but I'm not going to be able to get that through in just half an hour.
Yes, fair enough, fair enough. But it's so important. And we will tell everybody how to get to your videos so that we can examine that. I find this fascinating, and I want to know, as somebody who is, I love apologetics. I love also polemics. Is that how you say it?
Polemics. It's the war with words. It's going on the offense with words.
Right. I think that is somewhat part of my nature because I'm always asking why. I was a very troublesome child in school. I always wanted to know, if you have rules, why do we have these rules? And what is the basis on which these ridiculous things are being said? And so it was a problem, but it has helped me to be more of a critical thinker later in life. And here's what I'm hoping that you can help us with. There's a whole bunch of people in North America and Canada, and we are watching what's going on. Even at the DNC this week, we have got all of these pro-Hamas or these Palestinian people. They're Islamic, and they're fighting for, there to be a one-state solution and all of that. So that's a bit different, I understand, than and I don't necessarily at all need to talk about that issue unless you'd like to talk about it, that's fine. But the thing is that we are diametrically opposed to their positions on things. We do not support Hamas or Hezbollah. We do not support the radicalization of our countries. And in Canada, there has been a Muslim person who's told us that by 2060, they believe they have the numbers to vote in Sharia law here in Canada. This is of grave concern for me because my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and my great-great-grandchildren will grow up here, most likely. So what do we do with all of this?
All right, you're asking lots of questions. I'm not sure which one you want to zero in on. We can start. Let's start with the Palestinian issue, and you need to understand why October 7th had to happen. There had to be an October 7th. To back up, you need to pull back, just pull back, and look and see what's happening in the Middle East right now. And really what's happening in the world right now. As we all know, everybody is moving to the left. But more than that, when you move to the left, you are moving away from oil. You're moving towards electricity. You're moving to any other means of energy outside of oil. Now, who's going to hurt the most when you move away from oil? All the oil-rich Middle Eastern countries, of which Saudi Arabia is the largest. So because of that, the Middle East knows this. They see that Europe and all the big industrial powers are moving away from oil, and so they've got to do something. So let's take Saudi Arabia. Let's just take them as an example. Saudi Arabia is the largest oil producer. It is the one that has the most to lose if everybody stops buying their oil. So they've got to diversify. Now, how do you diversify with a population that doesn't do much in the world except they don't do anything? There's nothing in Saudi Arabia except oil. There's no other product there. There's nothing else we want. The world wants. So what do you have to do? You used all that oil-rich money from that you have brought, and you start buying up things all over. You start buying the entertainment industry. So you start buying and controlling world boxing. Now they control world boxing. So all the major boxing matches are now in Riyadh or in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Then you start buying up Formula One, and you start putting up all these beautiful state-of-the-art tracks in Qatar, in Bahrain, Riyadh. Two of them are going to be in Riyadh. One is going to be in Jeddah. So you're taking over Formula One, the largest, the most lucrative car racing in the world, much bigger than NASCAR. And then what do you do next? Then you start pointing and you start trying to take over golf. So you compete with PGA and you win with the PGA. So now who owns PGA? The Saudi Arabians own PGA. So now you have boxing, you have now race car, and you have golf. The next thing is left is, of course, football, what you call soccer. So they're buying up all the best players, Cristiano Ronaldo and I forget his name right now, from Brazil. They brought up all Neymar. They bought these guys for $330 million a piece. Nobody can afford that, only the Saudi Arabians. So you bring them on. So they're about ready to take over football. And that is European football, which is really world football. Then what do you do next? Well, then you have to start zeroing in on technology, and you have to zero in on education. So they have now are building 4 of the largest universities, one in Riyadh, 2 just outside of Riyadh, and 1 in Jeddah. Those are going to compete with Cambridge and Oxford and Harvard and Yale. They're on the cusp of competing, so they can pull all the best scholars, all the best professors from around the world to come and teach in Saudi Arabia. And then what they're doing next, they're creating the NEOM project. Have you heard about the NEOM project? N-E-O-M.
No.
Mohammed bin Salman, who for all practical purposes is running the country now. His father is still there, but he's getting age, so his son is doing all of these enterprises. He is the one that created the NEOM project. It started in 2015. It's going to end by 2030. They're building it as we speak. They're building a wall that goes from Aqaba all the way to Tabuk, which is 100 miles. And in that wall, there are going to be pods. And in every one of those pods, they're going to have research laboratories at the top. Underneath that are going to be where people live and where all the workers live. And below that will be where all the transportation is. So 3 different levels. They're going to build. They're in the process of building. This will be the largest building project ever seen by mankind. You will be able to see it from space once it's finished. They're going to bring in, and they're going to take Silicon Valley and transport it and bring it to Saudi Arabia in the NEOM project. Why are they doing this? Because that's the only way they can do it. But here's the problem. Yes, you have an awful lot of money, but you need huge amounts of investments. And who are the best people to invest in all these projects? The Jews. Why? Because the Jews own our banks. The Jews own all of our listen, they're the ones that control our film industry. They're the ones that control most of our institutions in America. So you got to use the Jews. You've got to get along with the Jews. So who do you need to get along with the Jews? Who are you going to have to come alongside of? You're going to have to come alongside Israel. That's why they need Israel. That's why the Abrahamic Accords were such a breakthrough. Remember when Kushner created that relationship between Israel and every one of these oil-rich nations? Nobody bothered to blink an eye. No one stopped to think what was going on here. We saw what was going on here. Kushner really hit on a nerve because every one of these oil-rich countries needs Israel in order to get the investment from all the Jews to come and to invest in all these projects. Now, in doing that, he was successful. But how much credit was he given? He wasn't given much credit. Why? Because our press is on the left, and they don't want anything to do with Kushner, and that's why you didn't hear much about the Abrahamic Accords. But you know about it. I know about it. So now suddenly you have these Abrahamic Accords. You have all these oil-rich Muslim countries, and they're all Sunni. Remember, these are Sunni countries. These are not Shiite countries. These are Sunni countries. They are now coming up, sidling alongside Israel. Well, what is the one entity who no one's talking about anymore? no one was talking about Palestine. Suddenly, the Palestinian issue became way back in the early 2000s. No one even cared about the Palestinian issue because all of their biggest backers, they're Sunni backers. And remember, Hamas is a Sunni organization. It's not Shiite. It is Sunni. They suddenly saw everybody turning their backs on them because everybody wanted to have Israel to be able, not only as a conduit, to be able to get to the West so they can then invest in their future. And that's why the Palestinians had to do October 7th. They had to get the ball back on them. They had to get the whole focus back on them. They had to make sure that they did something that was so atrocious, so brutal, that Israel would react. And Israel walked right into the trap. They walked right into it. And they did exactly what the Palestinians knew they would do. And you can see most of the world, the governments, have you noticed? Look at all of your Middle Eastern countries. Notice that nobody is on the streets arguing and demonstrating for the Palestinians in those countries. Have you noticed that? And the governments have not come out at all and said anything against Israel. Oh, they've done some lip service, but really, all the demonstrations are happening here in the West. They're happening in Europe. They're happening in Britain. They're happening in the United States. They're happening in Chicago today. It's us. We are the ones who have taken on the Palestinian cause. Isn't that odd that not one Palestinian has been allowed to leave Gaza to go to Egypt, or to go to Saudi Arabia, or to go to Jordan, or to go to Syria, or to go to any one of these countries that are right next door, and they are the people who are not only have the same language, they're all Sunni. Why do you think nobody wants the Palestinians to come, even one person to come into their lands? Because look and see what Hamas did. Hamas did the worst thing in the world for these countries. But more than that, they used weapons from Shiism. They used Iran to back them. They stood against everything the Sunnis believed. The Sunnis, if there's one thing they hate more than any other people, it's the Shiites. That's why all the battles have been between Shiite, Sunni, Shiite, Sunni. And nobody's picking up on this. No one here in the United States is picking up on this. And I'm saying, are you watching? Are you looking and seeing? Of course they've not said anything against the Israelis. They want the Israelis to destroy Hamas because Hamas is a turncoat. Hamas is a coward. Hamas wants a one-state solution. Everybody else wants a two-state solution except Hamas. And that's why when you sing, when you chant this chant that's all over today in Chicago, you hear it from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. That's called genocide. That's called genocide. You want to destroy all the Israelis, and take the land for yourself. No, none of these Muslim countries want that, and certainly not the Middle Eastern countries, and certainly not the oil-rich countries. It's as simple as that. That's why in the background, though they have to give lip service, they have to say what they need to say for the television cameras. In the background, they're all wishing that Israel really does destroy Hamas.
Wow. And so does the Sunnis and the Shiites, do they believe in the same Islamic religion? Is it pretty much the same?
It's all Islam. The difference between Sunnism and Shiism has to do with politics. It's all politics. It's who inherits the mantle of the Prophet Muhammad. The Shiites believe it must be someone from within the family of Muhammad. So it must be sent down from Ali, who was killed in the Battle of Siffin in 661, and his son Hussein, both who were killed. And then it went underground, and it's been underground ever since. And they're waiting for the 25th, what they call the 25th Mahdi. They call it the Mahdi. It's like a Messiah figure to return again, to then reinstate that mantle. The Sunnis do not believe that. The Sunnis believe that anybody who is chosen by the ulama, that means the leaders of Sunnism, they have to be a Sunni, not a Shiite. Anybody who is within Sunnism, anybody who's chosen by the leaders, he can take on the mantle. That's why Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, not Ali, but Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, the first three, are all chosen from within the ulama, the leadership of that time. And since that time, now that the caliphate has been destroyed, all the caliphs that came after that were all Sunni. All the caliphs were Sunni up until 1924, when Kemal Atatürk then shut down the caliphate a little over 100 years. Oh, actually 100 years ago today. This year, not today. It was just last month.
Okay, so we in the West then, so most of these people, if they are actually Palestinian, which it looks like a lot of white kids.
Laura-Lynn, they're all students, they're all professors. None of them are Palestinians except those who are leading it. And all the ones with the kafiyas, those black and white scarves that they're wearing, those are all Americans. Much of this is Antifada. This is Antifada. This is the left. They want a cause. And they want a cause that will bring down the American state so that they can gain power for themselves. The left has always dictated that they must have federal power to rule every area of our life. What better way than to use the Palestinian issue for their own gain?
So a few days back at the Capitol, there was all these rioters, and one of the gentlemen said loosely, but he was graffitiing on this monument, Hamas is coming.
Yeah.
You know a lot about this. Are we in danger? Is Hamas already here? Is Hezbollah already here? Is the danger of them wanting to attack us from the inside? Don't they want to dominate?
Yes, but Hamas is not here. Hezbollah is not here. They are so ineffectual. The Israelis are actually destroying them. The Israelis are so powerful, so strong. They are hardly even being touched in Israel by the Hamas or the Hezbollah. Listen, the only thing that Hamas can do is shoot rockets that are indiscriminate, that are aimed at civilian population. Why has no one ever got upset by that? If there was no Iron Dome, there would be thousands upon tens of thousands of civilian casualties in Israel. It's only because of the Iron Dome, which ironically comes from America. That's the only reason that they've been maintained safe. Look at how strategic Israel is in its military hardware. Look and see what they did in Damascus by taking out that Iranian politician with eight of his guards. They attacked the annex, not the embassy, but the annex right next door. They leveled the annex. Not one window was broken in the embassy. That's how specific, and that's how strategic, and that's how sophisticated their weaponry is. You've seen picture after picture after picture there in Gaza of building after building having been destroyed. And you always see the film of the building being destroyed. You ever notice that? Why is it that the camera's right there in place so that they can film the buildings being destroyed one after another? Have you ever noticed, has anybody ever questioned, how is it you can get a camera and you know exactly what building is going to be destroyed unless you're told beforehand that we're targeting this building? They always do it. The Israelis
and they tell
always
everyone.
send a message half an hour before. They always say, we're going to take this building down. You have half an hour to get everybody out. That's why they set up the cameras. But no one's ever thinking that through. They're not indiscriminately destroying people. They're not indiscriminately shooting down and attacking civilian subjects. Now, civilians are being killed. No one suggests that they aren't being killed because the Hamas puts the civilians there and they keep them in those buildings and they put them in hospitals, they put them in schools where the civilians are, which is against every rule, every code that anybody has ever followed. That's why this is probably the first war that we have ever witnessed where the Israelis are bending over backwards to follow the Geneva Convention. No other I don't know of any other war where anybody has followed the Geneva Convention like the Israelis have. And in years to come, they're going to say that. They're not saying it now because almost everything is coming from Al Jazeera out of Qatar, which is the mouthpiece for Hamas. And all the statistics are coming from Hamas. Isn't that interesting that we quote statistics from the very people that have the most to gain by inflating those statistics and saying that 2/3 of the casualties are women and children? Where are these women and children that are being killed? Where are they? Where are these pictures of them? Well, the Lab tried to come up with a whole series of them in the hospitals, and then they found out when they looked a little closer that was from Syria. That was from years ago, 2007, that those were taken. That had nothing to do with the Gaza situation. But she tried to slough it off as this is something that's happening in Gaza right now. So a lot of this is lies that are coming out from the left. And that's why so many of those young kids who are in Columbia University and all these universities, they're sitting there and they say, some stupidity. They're saying LGBTism for Hamas. Do they even know what Hamas would do with the LGBT people if they ever went to Gaza? They have no idea who they're supporting. They have no idea even what Hamas stands for or really what they want. There you can see the picture right there, LGBT for Hamas.
And queers. Sometimes they'll say queers for Palestine. And it's just shocking because these people will throw you off a roof or kill you for being gay, you know. So it really is such an incredible thing that's happening. I really appreciate your comments on this. So a lot of people, though, are fearful that in years to come, if we do not understand that immigrating or migrating all of these Muslims is going to be a huge problem for our nations, that we're going to live to reap the destruction from our lack of speaking out about it right now.
Listen, Laura-Lynn, I'll speak from my own I'll speak from my own time, from my own experience. I lived in London for 25 years before I came here, and I saw this very thing happen in London. And that's why we need to be so careful. We need to be aware and see what's happening in Europe, and look and see what's happening in London. Let me just give you London as an example. When I got there in 1992, I saw it immediately that many of those who were immigrating to Britain were coming because of the Commonwealth blanket. And you know what the Commonwealth is. You're part of it, and being in Canada,
Right?
which gives ability for anybody who's part of the Commonwealth to then immigrate to Britain. But those who were immigrating were not the ones that the British wanted. The vast majority of them were Milpuri Muslims coming from Kashmiri area of Pakistan, which is the northern part, which is the most rural part of Pakistan. And they were immigrating in their tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And none of them knew how. And of course, the only place Britain could put them up is in cities, just like we're finding with the immigrants here in the United States. All the ones coming across the border, they're sent to cities because these people don't have cars. They don't have any identity cards. They don't have driver's license. And beyond that, there's just no jobs waiting for them out in the rural areas. So they have to put them in the cities where they can house them and feed them and school them. And so all these people have been coming to places like Birmingham and Rochdale and Leicester, and they were just taking over the schools and taking over all the social centers, which are there for the Afro-Caribbeans, who are the ones who usually have populated their place. And some of the Afro-Caribbeans were being pushed out. Now, the exact same thing is happening here in the United States. Have you noticed? All the Afro-Americans are complaining that their schools and their hospitals and all of their housing has been given over to these immigrants who now are put at the top of the list. Well, this has been going on for 25 years in Britain. I saw it happen firsthand. There in London, we saw it happening all over. And we were warning, and we said, listen, the more you bring in these people who are not here to assimilate. Now, one of the great things about the immigrants coming to the United States, most of them coming from Central and South America, do want to assimilate. And they do. They're very much like us. They are Judeo-Christian. They are, most of them, Catholic. So they have the same viewpoints, they have the same cultural grid, and they have the same volition that we want. So actually, those are the best kind of immigrants to have. The worst kind of immigrants, and I've said this for 25 years, the worst kind of immigrants are Muslim because they don't assimilate. Listen, Islam is not just a religion. They don't separate church and state like we do. Islam brings the two together, has always brought the two together. And that's why so much of what they do is political. The first thing they do is take over the politics. That's exactly what Muhammad did when he went to Medina. He was not from Medina. He was from Mecca. And by 622, when he moved there, within 2 years, by 624, he had taken over Medina. He was now the arbiter between man and God. He had created the Constitution of Medina, which made him the arbiter for all of the actions of the Medinans. So that's the first thing they do. They're just following the example of their prophet, what he did. So they take over politically. What do that mean? That means they bring and they make sure their people are in government. That's what's starting to happen here in the United States. It happened in a big way just a few weeks ago in Britain with the election of the Labour Party to power. Many of those who they elected to power were Muslim councillors, Muslim MPs. 11 cities in Britain now have Muslim mayors. 11 cities, including London, now have Muslim mayors as of just a few weeks ago. And look at their victory talks. Look and see what they said when they were victorious. They didn't say how we are here to help you. We are here to ameliorate you. We are here to break down barriers. No, they said, we are Muslim. And Islam is here to stay. They made no bones about what their agenda was. Islam always takes over what whenever they come to a new place. They have done so for 1,400 years. Once they take over politically, Then they start using laws and institutions to support them. They start demanding that all the hospitals and all the schools and all the prisons only have halal meat for all of their believers. Well, what hospital, school, or prison can have two different sources for their meats? So they just make it the entire institution would only buy halal meat. Within a few weeks or a few months, they are all buying only halal meat. Which now, in some parts of Britain, there are no British butchers anymore. All of the butchering is done now by Muslims. So by doing that, they're bringing in their institutions. I could go on example after example, but we're going to run out of time. Once they have done that, of course, then they target education. And that's why they bring in their Islamic teaching. They don't want Christian teaching anymore, even though it's a Christian country. If they can prove that the majority of students are Muslim, they demand that that which is taught must be Islamic, not Christian, even though it's part of the curriculum, the national curriculum. And so by doing this, you can see that they start at a very young age and they start inculcating their Islamic ideals. Now, that is not assimilation as far as I'm concerned. That is taking over. So then they demanded to have Islamic courts, Sharia courts, that you were talking about half an hour ago. Britain, as of beginning of 2007, now has instituted that Sharia courts are illegal for Britain. And we have over 100. Whoa, where did that all come from? That's my computer doing that. Sorry. I don't know why it's rejoicing over that.
Just to emphasize. Yeah.
It's trying to empathize. Calm down, computer. So here you have over 100 Sharia courts now all over Britain, which are part of British law. They're inculcated by British law, though they're insubordinate to British law. Because as you know, when you get Sharia next to British law, the two do not meet, especially when it comes to marriage, when it comes to divorce, when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to beating of women. In Sharia courts, you can beat your women. It's in the Quran, in chapter 4, verse 34. The Quran stipulates that to control your wife, you must beat her. And the word is daraba, means to scourge her. So that's why the enormous number of women who are in these battered women's societies in Britain, the overwhelming number of women are Muslim women who are trying to get away from the beating of their husbands. So I could go on and give examples, but that's why it's already happening in Britain. It will, and it may come to Canada next. I think it'll come to Canada before it comes to the United States, because I think Canada is so far on the left. I think you're already moving down that route.
Oh man, I just agree, and I'm very alarmed, and I'm just sounding the alarm. In our Ontario province, KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, has gone to halal food. Now, it's not the white Canadians that are complaining; it's actually the East Indians, I think. The Sikhs, and they're saying, we don't eat halal meat. So these factions that we've all brought in are fighting. But Jim Ferguson from the UK is outlining this. He says, why we must fight for the right to criticize Islam. So much for Keir Starmer's new dawn for Britain. He seems more likely to drag us back to the dark ages. According to reports, the PM is thinking about adopting a definition of Islamophobia that could lead people to being censored if they say something too stinging about Islam. And these are the concerns that we're facing here as well in Canada with hate speech. Our Prime Minister would like to put in, hate speech laws, and it makes you wonder, if we say we're concerned about the number of Islamic migrants that are coming here, that are asserting themselves, that are getting into our politics, because that is also happening in Canada, and then you get deemed an Islamophobic, and then they want to hate censor you, and slap a charge on you and put you in jail.
Let me just give you my personal experience. This has happened to me personally in Britain. I was brought into, as of 1995. They started many of the Christian unions on the different universities were being challenged to do debates by the Islamic societies. And they didn't have anybody that could debate them. So they asked if I would come on board. And I said, yeah, let me debate them, because I would go down to Speaker's Corner in central London, Hyde Park, every Sunday. And I would take on hundreds of Muslims at a time. And I did that for 25 years. So I was much more adept. I knew how to debate. I knew how to take them on. I knew their material much better than they did in most cases. So I started going from university to university. And I must have done about 100 debates up until 2010. So from 1995 up until 2010, for 15 years, I was all over Britain doing debates. And I was also in Europe. I went there and did debates. I did one or two. I did one. Well, I won't go into all of those. So we're there in Britain by 2010. Finally, the Muslims realized that they could not take me on in debates. So what they did is they went to the National Union of Students, NUS, and they said, Mr. Smith is a hate preacher. He is an Islamophobe because of what he says about the Quran and about Muhammad. Those two things, which is true. I confront Muhammad and I've confronted the Quran for 40 years. And because of that, I was then labeled a hate preacher and an Islamophobe, which means I was not allowed to go on any university campus after 2010. So it's hit me personally, which means the only place that I could really confront and continue to do that was at Speaker's Corner, which is in London, which I did every Sunday. And then, of course, I use YouTube, but I've been using YouTube since 2006. I have over 107,000 subscribers now, just because of this polemics that I use. Now, what's fascinating to me is that censorship that shut me down from the university campuses, no one seemed to be bothered by it. And I'm saying, where is freedom? Where are the atheists? Where are the humanists? Where are the other students who they're going to be shut down as well? This is not just a Christian problem. This is a problem for anybody that wants to be able to be critical of Islam. And the two things you're not able to, they call me for a hate preacher, is that I criticize the Quran and I criticize Muhammad. Now, those are the two things. Stop and think. Oh, there go the balloons. The balloons seem to like whatever I'm doing.
It's for my birthday yesterday.
Oh, okay. Let's just celebrate your birthday. Let's call it that. There the balloons go again.
I got those.
Now, let's just say this. If back in 2007, during the time when the Labour Party was in power and Tony Blair was the prime minister at that time, the Muslims put together what they call incitement to religious hatred law, which stipulated that if anybody criticized the Quran or criticized Muhammad, it would be a 7-year offense in jail. 7 years. Now stop and think. This is in 2007. We're talking over, goodness sakes, we're talking a good 17 years ago that this was it. Now, that went before the Parliament 3 times and went to the House of Lords, back and forth. House of Lords tried to ameliorate it, tried to sanitize it, tried to really do away with it. It finally came back to the House of Parliament for a final vote. Tony Blair saw what was happening, and he quickly stepped outside so that his vote would not count. And it lost by 1 vote. That's how close it came, that law came in. Now, Starmer wants to bring back that again. He wants to bring that back in, the incitement to religious hatred. If that happens, Laura-Lynn, I won't be able to go to Britain again. Neither will you, if you start saying anything against Muhammad or against the Quran. Do you really want Europe to go down that route? Do you want Canada to go down that route, where we're not being able to even say anything critical about one book and one man? Stipulate that this is a punishable offense of 7 years in prison? Can you see how stark this is? And this is why we need to shut it down. This is why you need to talk about it, because you are a public voice. You are the one that exactly is dependent on freedom of speech. And that's why if we go ahead.
Well, I 100% agree. And, myself, Jim Ferguson, who we are hoping to bring to Canada as well. But this is, he's highlighting these are some really dangerous times in our country where the crackdown on freedom of speech means they can label you subjectively, whatever they want to label you. And, we're seeing people like the latest VP pick, Walz. Is it Tim Walz? And in the United States, he just is all over with the Islamic people. And it seems that the Vice President Kamala Harris at this point, trying to be the president, is all in with them as well. And she wants it to be, that we would never use the words Islamic terrorism. And people from all these other countries are beginning to enact these things. So I do feel this is becoming very, very serious. And for people like yourself and myself that speaks out, because I do tend to speak what I believe that God wants us to know, despite what the cost might be. This is not a good trend.
Well, Laura-Lynn, you and I are very similar in that respect. I think it's because we're both Mish kids. You grew up in Uganda. I grew up in India. My parents never left India. They loved India. They died there. Their graves are there. My grandparents They also died in India. So I'm third generation Mishkit. And I think because of that, having grown up in India, I've grown up with Muslims all around me. It is now the second largest Muslim country on earth. And they're all in the north where I grew up. So I had roommates that were Muslim. I had classmates that were Muslim. I love them. They're the best people. They're my favorite people. And it's not them that I have a problem with. It's what Islam has done to them. And so that's why I never confront them. I confront the Quran. I confront Muhammad. I confront the whole traditions. I confront the Sharia law. I confront all these institutions that Islam has instituted that takes great men and women that I love and I've grown up with and makes them into heinous individuals. And that's why we need to be careful that we separate the people from the religion itself, and that we need to shut down this religion. This religion has done so much damage in my lifetime, in your lifetime. It's going to continue to do damage. If you have any doubt, just look and see what they're doing in Nigeria. I'm going to Nigeria in November. I have to go to help them out. 83% of all Christians killings in the world today are happening in Nigeria.
I've heard
and
that.
It's all Muslims against Christians. They need our help, and no one's paying attention to that because they're all paying attention to Gaza. Gaza has taken over all the news. No one wants to talk about Nigeria. No one wants to talk about the northern area of Uganda. No one wants to talk about what's happening in Ethiopia or what's happening in Pakistan. Jalalabad, and look at the whole town where they had all those churches that were burned. No one wants to talk about that because that is called hate speech. That is called Islamophobia. Well, I do, and I want to keep talking about it, and you're not going to shut me up because I believe that we have a great Lord, and our Lord does not want this religion to do any more damage to his sons and his daughters. But he needs our mouthpiece. He needs your mouthpiece. He needs this freedom of speech. He needs us to have that freedom so that we can bring it to the table, so we can speak about it, and so that people can wake up and realize, be careful who you elect to office. Look at their agenda. Look at the freedoms they're going to take away from you. Once those freedoms go, it's taken us 1,000 years to get those freedoms. We could lose them within 4 years. And that's why we need to be careful. We need to make sure that we vote right, we vote correctly, and that we do not allow these impositions against our speech, and so these impositions are getting the word out. We need to get the word out. We need to get the gospel on our lips, on our minds, and our volition. We need to get it so that everybody hears it, because I can't think of a better place to bring Muslims back to than to Jesus Christ. Take him away from Isa, bring him back to Yeshua. Take him away from Allah, bring him back to Yahweh. Take him away from the Quran and bring him back to the Bible. Let's bring him home. Let's bring him home.
Wow, that's amazing. And I appreciate you saying all of that, because my relationship in marching with the Muslims that are so strong, I mean, many of them, I would say like, wow, a huge number of those 1 million across Canada that marched was the Muslim group. And I just loved them. I loved how they had such passion to stand up for, male and female, being male and female. And then, it's just been real hard to, I already knew that there were difficulties because you and I had already had a former talk. But when you say, that we need to keep speaking, like, what else can we do? Are our countries doomed? Should the Lord tarry and not return? And we do know and we do await his return. But in 2060, if they believe they have the numbers in Canada to vote in Sharia law, what do you recommend? What should we be doing as citizens?
Well, as citizens, you have your responsibility to make sure that you keep your voice open, you keep confronting it, and don't walk away. And for heaven's sakes, don't keep this under a bushel. This is the biggest problem. If you say nothing, if you just turn your back and say, let the government take care of it, let the Holy Spirit take care of it, I'm not really involved with it, that's already acquiescence. You've already acquiesced. And you've taken a position by doing that. But in some respect, we need that. There's some of us, all of us need to speak up, but there's some of us that need to go on the offensive. Some of us, you're doing that, Laura-Lynn. I'm doing that. And those of us who go on the offensive, we need to make sure that people support us and stop bad-mouthing us and stop trying to censor us. For heaven's sakes, I'm not waiting for the humanists, I'm not waiting for the LGBT lobby, and I'm not waiting for the atheists to do this job. They really don't understand who they're sidling up to. They have no idea what Pandora's box they're opening by siding up with the Hamas and with all these far left, even with these Muslims with their agenda.
I know.
We understand it better than anybody else because the Muslims are so much like us. We understand them better than anybody else. Here's the other thing, and this is what I'll probably end with. Also, I don't want really the atheists and the humanists to be using our material. I'd rather they wouldn't do it, because if they do finally persuade the Muslims that there is a problem with Islam, and it's endemic to their whole foundation, it's in their scriptures, it's in the model of their prophet. What are they going to do when the Muslims realize, oh, my, we got the wrong prophet, we got the wrong book? They're just going to become nihilists. They're just going to become atheists and humanists. And I don't want them to become humanists and atheists. I want them to come home to Jesus Christ. I want them to come home to the only model I know, and that's the person of Jesus Christ. Because we as Christians, we not only understand what Islam is, we understand how strong it is, we understand what motivates them, but we are the only ones that have an alternative. We are the only ones that have an answer. We are the only ones that can bring him back to a bigger book, a bigger man, and a bigger God. Because we are the only ones that really have what they're looking for. They are looking for Jesus Christ. They just don't know it. They do want a revelation that is absolutely sacrosanct and has stood every criticism, every historical criticism, source, redacted, form criticism, text criticism. The Bible has withstood every one of those criticisms. It is Islam and the Quran and Muhammad that haven't yet. And that's why we need to take them away from that book, that man, and that model, and that religion, and bring them back to Jesus Christ. And we're the only ones that can do that, Laura-Lynn. So in some ways, we have a great responsibility. Let's do not shut up, for heaven's sakes. Let's just keep talking, and let's keep recording, and let's keep getting the word out there. And God bless you for what you're doing. I love your show, and I love the questions you're asking, and I love the conclusions you're coming back to. Because these aren't just ones that are opinionated or because of your experience. You're doing this because of who you love. And you're doing it because of the model that you follow. And you're doing it because Christ did it before you. And so did Paul. And so did all the early church. Look and see what the early church did. They were up against everybody. They were hated by everybody. They were put into prison. All of the disciples were put into prison. Every one of them was flogged. Every one of them was killed except for John. Notice, they were in a much more dire situation than we are today. We're not getting flogged and put into prison. We're not getting, we are getting hated, and we're getting somewhat persecuted, but nothing like the early church. Everywhere Paul went, take a look and see everywhere he went. He went into synagogue after synagogue after synagogue, uninvited. He never made friendships with anybody. Laodicea, Cappadocia, Berea, there in Ephesus. He went right into the synagogue of every city, and he confronted the Pharisees with what they had done to the Messiah. That's called polemics. He used polemics. And what did they do? They threw him into prison. They beat him up. Twice they tried to stone him to death. He caused a riot in Ephesus, and they finally killed him in Rome. Now, you don't get beaten up and stoned and cause riots and get killed just for making friendships and keeping your mouth shut. Obviously, Paul was quite a paradigm for us today. We need to be more like Paul. We need to be more like Stephen. We need to be more like all the disciples. Because if it was good enough for them in the first century, why isn't it good enough for us in the 21st century? And remember, this is what Christ commissioned them with in Matthew chapter 10. Look at Matthew chapter 10. And Christ is giving the commission to the 12. He's saying, I'm sending you out as lamb before wolves. You're going to be hated, number one. You're going to be persecuted, number two, if you preach in my name. You're going to be in prison if you preach in my name. You're going to be, yes, flogged if you preach in my name. And finally, he says, you're going to be killed if you preach in my name. For I have not come to bring peace, I have come to bring the sword, to set father against son and mother against daughter. It's right there in Matthew 10. And then he says in verse 38, he who is not willing to bear my cross is not worthy to be my disciple. We need to start bearing that cross, Laura-Lynn. And we need to start realizing if that's the commissioning for the 12 disciples, it's our commissioning. We get the same commission. I was never commissioned that when I was ordained as a reverend. They never commissioned me like that. Why didn't they? We've forgotten that. We're not reading the New Testament. We're not going to what Jesus was saying. He knew that this battle is going to cost an awful lot. He knew that we're going to be hated and persecuted. He knew that we're going to be thrown into jail. And yes, even some of us are going to have to be killed. Well, that's what I'm willing to do. I'm worthy to do that. And I say, God, if it's in your timing, and it's always going to be in his timing, I'm more than willing to follow in that route. And I think we need lots more of us to do just that.
Wow. Reverend Dr. J. Smith, you're amazing. I thank you for your courage. It's very inspiring. We all need to have more of your passion. We all need to be able to speak wisely and with knowledge about these issues. And I'm trying to educate myself and the audience in how we deal with this, because I think it's actually one of the most very serious topics and conversations of our time. And you're at the forefront, and we sure do appreciate you. And thank you for giving us your amazing time. I hope that we can do it again, because I think that we actually have a really big audience. The title we put up today, JT, was what? Who is Jesus to the Muslims? And I'm like, is anyone going to tune in? It's a very big audience. I think it's actually important because this is part of what we're actually dealing with real time. We don't know what to say or what to do, but we need to be aware. And so you're awesome. Thank you very much. And let's do it again.
Laura-Lynn, and thank you for having me on board. It's been great being here. I'd love to come back again.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, that is one of my most passionate topics that I bring up an awful lot here. And I have to say that one of the reasons I keep hitting it is because, well, I get some negative email about it, but I also get some really positive. I've had what I consider to be close to a death threat with an email that was sent to me for speaking on this. People know and can access where we who speak out, where we live. So can I just explain to you that when I decide that I'm going to actually keep covering this topic, that it is because of the Apostle Paul, what Dr. J. Smith just talked about. The Apostle Paul, who knew that he had to confront, that he had to be honest, that we had to, number one, evangelize and bring those to know the power of the cross who do not yet understand. And so I think this has become a passion for me because I marched with so many of our Muslim Canadians who do not want their children to be taught gender nonsense, like I don't want my children taught that. And we all stood arm in arm, hand in hand, to fight this. And then October 7th happened. And all of a sudden, I had a little wake-up call when, the business people that I'm working with, the strong Canadians that, agree with me, well, what did they have to say? Well, they said that they support Hamas and Hezbollah. And they made that clear in comments of feeds that I'm in. The biggest shock of all time for me was understanding we're not on the same page at all about this. I was hoping that these would be moderates that, came here and yes, they might be Islamic, but they certainly wouldn't support terrorism. Certainly not what happened on October 7th. But they do not see it the way that we do. And then to realize that they would say things that were really, that made me kind of, question, well, what do they believe? Because they would say, we love Jesus. Laura-Lynn, we love the Christians. We love the Jews. We love Jesus. Well, okay, so, and you love Hamas. And who is your Jesus? So I'm very grateful that we could get some clarity on that, because then, I came to understand, I thought maybe that they loved the Jesus that we love, the Jesus who died and rose again, but that's not the Jesus. It's Isa. As Dr. J was explaining, it's Isa. It's not the same Jesus. And they should be, as he said, they should be calling him Yeshua, which is the Arabic term. Why wouldn't they be? So as hate speech laws loom in all of our countries, and JT, I had, let me just see if I can easily find, a woman has been, I'll just tell you about it. A woman has been, she's been charged with, hate speech, I guess, against some people, and they won't tell you what she said. So I'm not for racism. I mean, I don't like when people are running around saying that white people are trash, because they are. A lot of that's going on. I'm a white person. I don't think you should be allowed to trash me. I didn't get to pick the color of my skin. God saw fit that I was born a small white child in Uganda, East Africa. I'm African on the inside, trust me. That's where I get a little bit of my fire from. But I don't like that people seem to think they can say any racist thing they want, especially, it's not really white women that get the worst of this, you know, with all of our privilege apparently. And I'd like to know where that privilege is the last few years, because that privilege of being a white woman in Canada has gone right out the window as I've lost my national broadcast job with a Christian organization. White privilege did not help me. White privilege has not gotten me another job except for sitting right here with you guys every day. And I'm grateful for that. I finally figured out maybe that's what God wanted all along. It took me a while. I didn't know. I tried to get jobs at Walmart and no one would hire me because of my social media. So I can't even get a real job. You know what I mean? I can't get a normal job. So I sit here every day going, okay, Lord, what do you want us to cover today? And this is very serious for me now because it took about a year or two into doing this every day after COVID hit when you couldn't go out. So, hey, we just started broadcasting because all kinds of nonsense was happening. And it took me a while to realize this is the calling. This is why I do this. God wanted me here. And that's why we're about to launch on Daystar with a television half hour. And if any of you appreciate that I'm willing to speak the truth here, I wonder if you'd also be willing to help us, to support us, to launch onto television, which would bring me right back onto television again, where I thought I was going to spend a lot of years with another broadcaster. That didn't happen. So now I feel the Lord leading us back to television as well. It doesn't mean we won't keep doing our internet show so that we can connect with all of you and have longer shows. It's only a half hour. And it's not current events, on Daystar. It would be more certainly talking about issues like we've discussed today, but it would not be this same format necessarily. So some of you out there, you could actually help us. And let me tell you what we need. We need about $100,000. And if you have a love for the truth, and if you have a love for people that are courageous and passionate to speak, perhaps you're one of those folks who could help us and literally write maybe a $10,000 check, maybe a $5,000 check, a $1,000 check to help us to get to that place. That would be awesome. Because I need to say what we're talking about today on television. We need to have a loving, honest, faithful discussion on what Canada's dealing with. And if you think that would be good, would you help me to do that? That would be awesome. One of the ways you could do that is just to go to my website, which is Laura-Lynn.tv, and there's a donate button there. You can call me, send me an email, because you might not just want to, send large amounts over the internet. I don't know. Everything seems to get to us. But if you'd like to have a meeting even to discuss it more, that'd be good too. We're taking serious steps because we believe the time is short. I believe the time is short and we need to speak the truth powerfully and in love. I do not have hate for my Muslim friends that I now understand support Hamas and Hezbollah. I don't hate them, but I don't agree with them. And I do not want Sharia law in my Canada in 2060. And that is something that I think that we have to be willing to speak out loud in love, speak the truth. So let's go to a couple clips of what's going on today. Even CNN thinks Kamala Harris' price-fixing economic plan is a huge mistake. Can I just say something before we do this, JT? So can you stop me? Probably not right now. So I had to understand why price fixing, wasn't a good idea. And when you begin understand, a lot of people, they are just cheering and cheering and cheering. Oh yeah, Kamala is going to put all of these price fixes onto goods. So she can tell the grocer, oh, you can't sell eggs at $5. You got to sell eggs at $2. But the thing is, these things have been done in Venezuela, where it went from one of the richest countries to the poorest countries. Different communist tactics that tell people and basically wipe out, industry, and try to tell a farmer what he can get when he's got large expenses. And then you tell him, well, you can only get $2 for your eggs. You destroy his business. So take a listen to how Kamala Harris, to the large crowds, that she seems to be getting, I don't know who's paying who, but as she's telling them that she's going to fix the prices. Well, they're very excited about that, but not everybody is, not even some of the folks on CNN. Take a look.
The federal ban on price gouging for groceries. You are skeptical of this. Why?
Well, first of all, nobody can explain what price gouging means. It's like that old line about pornography. I know it when I see it, in the sense that what does it mean to have an excessive price or an excessive profit margin? That seems to be shorthand for a price or a profit margin that bugs me. That seems too high. So it's very hard to pin down what this would actually mean. If you look at the legislation that, as I mentioned, is already in the Senate, led by Senate Warren and Senator Bob Casey and a slew of others, the particular way that this is written, which is likely to be the template for any proposal that Harris would eventually embrace, is especially bad in that it just bans excessive prices, grossly excessive prices, grossly excessive profit margins, and says that the Federal Trade Commission can use any metric it deems appropriate to decide what that would mean, which basically says, like, it's not going to be markets, it's not going to be supply and demand that's determining how much your grocery store charges you for milk or for eggs. It's going to be some bureaucrat in DC, which seems like totally unworkable, first of all, for the FTC to be deciding like how much Kroger charges for eggs in Michigan. But it also would be very bad for markets. We've seen this kind of thing tried in lots of other countries before: Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, et cetera. It leads to shortages. It leads to black markets. Plenty of uncertainty. And beyond that, the specific way this bill is written might actually increase prices because of some of the other language in it. Things like requiring public companies to disclose in their quarterly reports, their quarterly earnings reports, how they're setting prices, which is a great way to help them collude, which normally we don't want them to do. So anyway, the devil's in the details, I guess, for that bill, but it's really hard for me to imagine any form of legislation that preserves the spirit of what she's proposing that would not be, at best do nothing, at worst cause a lot of harm.
Cause a lot of problems. And you can see in history that this hasn't worked. I mean, it's just not the way to do things. They have printed money, borrowed money, shot up the inflation, allowed millions and millions and millions of illegal migrants into the country, and basically destroyed single-handedly, in 3 3/4 of a year. That's, 3/4 years, that's what they've done. And so now to kind of come along and say, and everybody gets a car. Well, maybe not a car, but you get $25,000, to buy your first home. Okay, let's say that there's 1 million people, 25,000 times 1 million. Who's paying for all that, right? The taxpayers. That's who pays for all of these things that she's giving away. It's, meanwhile, everyone's suffering. People are crying on videos because they actually can't afford to feed their children. This is how bad this is. And what do they say? Oh, no, the economy's great. So it's just been fascinating to watch, this whole thing come. Do we, I can go to this National Post thing here. I got a great call on the weekend, and that was from Tony. in jail. He's one of the Coots dudes. And the irony is that Tony and I share the same birthday, which was yesterday, August 18th. And we both turned a year older. He has now spent 3 of his birthdays in jail. And so here's the National Post talking about the, this issue, what the mixed verdict in the Coots Freedom Convoy blockade trial really means. Guns, doomsday culture, anti-government messages, the police response, the Emergencies Act. How will history view Coots? And so it says there will be a place in Canada's history books for the divisive and dramatic blockade at Coots, a busy border crossing between Alberta and Montana that saw a clamorous protest against COVID-19 health measures in 2022. And it stretched out just 18 days, but its repercussions continue in Canada's courts, politics, national security, and policing. And it continues with Tony still being in jail. And would you believe it? So the jury came back and they dismissed the murder charge, basically conspiracy to murder police officers, because that there's absolutely no basis to have had that. That was thrown out. And would you believe that now the Crown is going to appeal that? So the Crown's going to appeal the not guilty verdict that was brought forward by the jurors. Like, our justice system is messed up. I don't know who these nutty people are, but even when they try their case and jurors, men and women that are peers in Canada, say that they're not guilty of that, but did find them guilty on some other charges. He had some explosives in his vehicle, which belonged to his father, different things like that. So basically, from what I was understanding from Tony, what's happened is that the charges they've actually been convicted on don't even warrant time in jail. Case law has no basis to have put them in jail, let alone 3 years. Absolutely disturbing. So it hasn't quite been 3 years, but this is his 3rd birthday in jail. So this is problematic. And I do pray that when the judge sentences that this will be, Tony's day out of jail, that he gets to come out after serving all that time. And I'll tell you what else I find real interesting is this case in somewhere, I don't know if it's Minnesota or where in the States, but this woman has now won a court order that she is to be paid $700,000 because she lost her job because she wouldn't take the shot. A woman in the States. It's interesting how a year or 2 or 3 changes things, right? So I told Tony, as we had a great chat yesterday and a prayer on the phone, I told him, hang on tight. Write down everyone's name. Make sure you get the names, the judges, the lawyers. Make sure you get their names right. When you write the book that tells the true story of what went on here. And make sure that when it's shown that you're vindicated, that you are able to one day perhaps find justice in another court case wherein you're not the defendant, they're the defendants. That's going to be a good day. That's going to be a good day. So happy birthday. One day later to you, Tony. If you guys all could just keep sending letters of encouragement. I let him know that some of you, after we just did a show with him, you had some great encouragement. You had some great comments after the video. I told him those. And he said, wow, Laura-Lynn, like that is just so, such a blessing to his soul. When you're in there, and he said, it's like an echo chamber. He's just hearing from the other guys, and you don't have like regular, interesting and uplifting things coming at you. It's a hard place to be in jail. And he is just standing as a man of faith, a man who loves the Lord, a family who loves the Lord, his mother, a tremendous prayer warrior. I appreciate what Tony's going through, and I know this is not the end. He will come through on the other side. Okay, Climate Depot founder Mark Morano talks about liberal hypocrisy around climate change.
We have First Lady Jill Biden. She was in Paris with her husband for the, or in France for all the events there with the state visit. But then she flew back for Hunter's trial. But she doesn't want to miss the big party, the state dinner, so she flew back again. So what do you make of this? I mean, these are the biggest, proponents of all this green agenda. They're willing to have people go poor and not be able to afford groceries over their green agenda, but she has to get back to the party.
Yeah, again, you expect world leaders, their spouses, to do a lot of traveling. The difference here is the Biden administration is directly aiming at our freedom of movement.
Yes.
We already have in a declared climate emergency, massive travel restrictions being proposed. One activist says in a climate emergency, which Joe Biden wants to do, and it's been multiply reported he's going to do at some point, you're going to have only fly when it's, quote, morally justifiable, unquote. Kind of reminds me of Barbara Streisand, who was funding all these climate scientists and pushing the climate change. At the same time, she flew her 3 dogs to Europe to visit her while she was in one of her concerts. They actually had a plane just for her dogs. This has been going on for years. CNN proposing carbon passports for Americans, for the government to monitor our travel. But yet Jill Biden can fly freely. This is a new era that's being descended. Americans aren't used to this. A class-based society where we, the peasants, are going to be massively restricted in our movement, but our ruling class can do whatever they want, fly endlessly. And that's why this is significant, because of their imposing.
So true. All of these things, it's all about control. Remember that. When you wonder, how can they be so foolish? Like they say one thing and do another. Remember John Kerry a while back? He was flying around the planet just saying, climate crisis, flying his jet plane around the globe, basically oblivious to his own behavior. And he got confronted. He's like, well, I had to. How else could I, get the message out and, get around to everywhere? Exactly. How else do we all get a lot of things done that we know need to get done? We all have lives too, not just you, Mr. John Kerry. So sometimes people do use these things to get around. And when you see the truth of it, carbon dioxide, it's so hilarious. Oh, carbon dioxide that plants need in order to grow. I mean, all of it is crazy. We've covered it in other shows. Just a couple more things before I let you guys go. Matt Walsh has a new document. No, I missed one. Oh, sorry. Michael Ian Dyson accuses Representative Nancy Mace of racism. Why? Well, because of the way she pronounces Kamala's name.
But when you disrespect Kamala Harris by saying you will call her whatever you want, I know you don't intend it to be that way. That's the history and legacy of white disregard for the humanity of black people.
Oh, so now you're calling me racist.
I didn't say. I just said you weren't a
BS.
racist.
That is complete.
No, you don't have to intend racism to accomplish
You are
it.
intending that I am
Your disrespect of Kamala Harris is part and parcel of a tradition of disrespect.
It's offensive,
Congresswoman. Why can't you just?
I'm not calling you a racist. I'm telling you what the practice is racist.
You are. You absolutely are.
The practice
Let me get
disrespecting. No, what's disgusting is your disrespect of her.
Professor,
this gentleman said, I didn't know her name. He's trying to do it.
Is her disrespect of women. She doesn't know what a woman is. And if 25 years ago,
white women don't have the ability to tell black women who paid the price of blood to make this country what it is, to tell them they're not real women.
25 years
care
ago,
for your babies
25 years ago, I became the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. I fought my way through it.
So pronounce her name right.
Let me
actually pronounce her name right.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala.
You said this.
We don't call you Nancy.
It's Kamala. You're doing this on purpose, Congresswoman.
That's disrespectful.
You can't expect people to respect your service if you don't respect hers.
Let's
25 years ago.
You're a white woman disrespecting
Call her
women
Mama.
away from women. That's disgusting.
You know what the problem is? Kamala, it's such an odd name. Like, it's not a usual name. I've never, ever known anyone else on the planet named Kamala. So if you say Kamala or Kamala, you know, people got it wrong all the time. That is not racist. It's just that she has a difficult name. It's so stupid for people to call each other names, these same things. This is like my Muslim friend. All of a sudden, he called me a bigot. And he said I was Islamophobic when I started pointing out some of the things that I've been learning. And I said, I'm not Islamophobic, although I am a little bit afraid of, you know, what some of this religion could bring to our Judeo-Christian country. But I am not a racist. I'm not a bigot. I do believe you're entitled to your opinions. But just because we have disagreements and we state them does not make you certain things. People are all, and I'll never forget, I guess it was 2021, when a kid downtown was, you know, yelling these things about white people and about our racism. And I said, but you're being a racist by saying this about white people. You're being the racist. And then they said, you can't be racist towards white people. I'm like, what? You can't be racist towards white people because they have all this privilege, apparently. The privilege I'm not operating in, apparently. I'm operating under the favor of God, but it's pretty different from the privilege of man. I'm not living in white privilege, I'll tell you that. And so, you know, this is an interesting season, isn't it? And then they're going to start making these laws that want to shut you up for if you have an opinion and what you're allowed to express. And I'm looking forward to this situation in British Columbia. This woman's been arrested. I'd like to know, what did she say? You know, what did she say? And is it any worse? Okay, so it's apparently towards the Asian community. All right. What was she threatening death, or was she mocking? Was she making, you know, racist slurs? Okay. But I know lots of people mocking, threatening, and making racist slurs to white people. And they're doing it pretty openly. I just saw a video the other day of this woman like swearing her head off to, you know, and saying, and it was about being to this guy, about him being white. Has she been arrested? Has she been charged? That was a physical altercation going on. I don't know. Because you have freedom of speech, people say stupid things. So you have to have the freedom to speak in order for honest conversation to happen. So you can't just go telling someone, well, you can't speak against Christians. And how much are they doing that right now, speaking against Christianity? And, you know, it was interesting what was said also about, you know, all of these Christians that are being murdered by the Muslims in, is it Nicaragua? Yeah, Nigeria. I knew it started with an N. And so in Nigeria, this is like a bloodbath against the Christians right now. You barely hear about it at all. I mean, oh, some of it's just so frustrating, you know, the silence. So Matt Walsh, am I at the right one now? Matt Walsh has a new documentary, and it's called Am I Racist? Take a look.
Let's be clear what's happening in this country. It's Nazism. Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up in the 90s, I never thought much about race. Sure, you noticed, but never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me.
Being a white, straight, cisgender man is the top of the pile.
I'm on the top of the pile. That's me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
Can you please leave?
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover. If I want to be an ally, I need to look like one.
What is racism?
Martin Luther King said not to judge people by
Martin Luther King said a lot of stuff.
Is America inherently racist?
What the hell is that?
The word inherent is challenging there. America is racist to its bones. All of the...
So inherently.
Yeah.
The entire system has to burn. And I'm not going to even use save this country. This country is not worth saving. This country is a piece of shit.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
They gon' say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. Where are you guys on your anti-racist journeys? So I'll look around the room and point to who we believe is the most racist person in the room. We want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument. Would you mind signing it? You will? What do you think about this issue of heteronormativity and how it intersects with the broader structures of racism in society?
They gon' say I'm racist.
What's up with white people? What are you doing to decenter your whiteness?
Who's making it the center? Why are they doing that?
And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you and less for you. White
Folks,
White.
trash,
White supremacy.
white woman, white boy,
White.
entitlement,
White.
centering,
White.
silence.
Is there a black person around here?
So there's a black person right here. Does he not exist?
They gon' say I'm racist, but they call everybody racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. And what's your name?
I'm Matt.
Matt. Hi, Matt.
Nice to meet you.
Just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gon' say you racist, but they call everybody racist.
Okay, I can't wait. I can't wait to see that. So that's September 13th. It's hitting theaters. I bet not all theaters.
It might be Daily Wire.
Daily Wire, maybe a streaming, maybe a pay thing. Okay, because I did see on one thing that it was going to some theaters, but then another guy was saying, well, there's none near me. And I just have a feeling that here in beautiful British Columbia, it'll be...
It's expensive to distribute films, so they may have a small
Right.
US theater release.
Oh, a small U.S. theater release, and then they'll put it out. And listen, help Matt Walsh out. Download that puppy and watch it as a family. That sounds awesome. Get all your friends over, your neighbors, and it looks funny. And the irony of it all. You know, these racist people against white people, basically talking about how bad racism is, and you know what privilege you have. Okay, one more. So Marin County in California has seen a decline in the autism rate, and you won't be surprised to hear why. Take a look.
They know exactly what's going on, and they don't want to investigate it. Autism, Cynthia Nevison is the expert on autism prevalence in California. She's mapped it over the last 20 years. And what she found is that from birth year 2000 to birth year 2013, the autism rate in Marin County, California, to children born to wealthy white and Asian parents plateaued and then declined. That's never happened before in the history of autism. We've never seen a decline in the autism rate. It's also a fact that vaccination rates declined in that population over that time period because parents were worried about safety. They were worried about too many shots on the schedule. And so wealthy white and Asian parents in Marin County, California, stopped vaccinating. Now, it could have been something else. Could have been they were eating blueberries and kale from the farmer's market. I don't know. We should look into it. But the CDC never looks into this matter, which is a massive poker tell that they know exactly what's going on and they don't want to investigate it. Autism stems from regulatory capture.
Isn't that interesting? Fun fact, so in my early 20s, I worked for an organization called Marin Investments. And it took me so long, and he said it wrong. He said Marine, and it's not. They went over and over with me. It's Marin. And I'm like, Marin? No, it's Marin County. And so how very interesting that this is, where this took place. Just absolutely fascinating. So I'm, thrilled because a lot of young kids now these days making the choice not to have their children vaccinated. And, just in consultation with doctors and understanding some of these things, getting some good information, they were actually able to have a discussion with their doctor and come to an agreement in one case. And I think that that's very positive for our nation and for not filling up everything, filling up our bodies with stuff that doesn't belong there. Oh, okay. We want to make a correction. Was this the show that aired Thursday, I think, with Dr. Russell Blaylock? In watching the playback, he said he accidentally used the word ibuprofen, that ibuprofen kills the cancer stem cells. What he was meaning to say was ivermectin. And if you remember, I was saying ibuprofen, and I was quite taken. But you know how, like, sometimes in the heat of things, you don't register, you're saying the wrong word. So he wanted to make that correction, and I really honor him for that, because he didn't have to say anything. He can go, oh, they'll figure it out. I didn't mean ibuprofen. But he wrote in, this is a very honorable doctor, and he was spectacular, speaking about cancers and, things like that. And so we just want to honor Dr. Russell Blaylock and say thank you for correcting that. He didn't mean ibuprofen. I mean, I was going to start downing those things. So I'm just kidding. Oh, I did think it was surprising. Okay, the other thing, JT, anything else that I've sent you? No, there's a few things, BBB, that I had, but we won't go into them today. Let's close. We've gone on a long time. I hope you like this show. Seems like the longer we're on, the more you guys show up to watch. So then it's hard to get off. All right. My website, again, is Laura-Lynn.tv. Thank you very much, any of you who can support us. And if you appreciate what we do, it means the world to us. You can also send an e-transfer, LLTT live@pm.me. And we have snail mail, which is definitely snailish these days, but that is at Box 1065, Vedder Crossing, Chilliwack, British Columbia, V2R3N7. And if you need to get some ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, contact Mia at SozoHealth. We're also encouraging you, as we do often talk about the economy and our money and the printing of the money and what they're doing and this whole shenanigans, worldwide shenanigans, as China, Russia, the BRICS nations are buying gold like it's going out of style. They are investing in gold. And what did we do? Canada and the US basically sold off gold, and now we print money when we need it. So I just hope that the PM will consider printing money to cover our taxes. Thank you. All right, I want to leave you today with 1 John 3. This is what I was reading early this morning, and I thought, considering the difficult topic that we had today, how much God loves us. God doesn't see your color. God's like Martin Luther King. He judges a man by his character and not the color of his skin. He's a good God. He's faithful. And he loves us incredibly. And it says this. In 1 John, I'm going to just start with at the tail end of 1 John 2, verses 28 and 29. It says, "And now, dear children, continue in him, so that when he appears, we may be confident and unashamed before him at his coming." Guess what, everyone? One day, if me and JT aren't here and the show's not on, and there's some crazy story going around that millions of people, maybe even billions, have disappeared from this planet, let me tell you what it's not. It's not the UFOs. We await the return of the Lord Jesus Christ, and it shall happen. If you know that he is righteous, you know that everyone who does what is right has been born of him. And then in 1 John 3, it begins like this. "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God." Is that just if you're a white person? No. Is that my African brothers and sisters that I grew up with? Yes. Boy, did they love God. Let me tell you, when the Africans had church, there was the dancing. I did not inherit this ability. There was the singing. Not great at that either. But there was this prayer. This intensity of prayer that my African brothers and sisters knew how to engage in. This I have inherited. I love to pray. I love to beseech the Lord God that he would intervene on behalf of my family, on behalf of our nation, on behalf of our culture and our communities, on behalf of our governments. I beseech the Lord that he would bring a righteous ruler for Canada and for the United States of America coming up in November. The most important election of all times is about to happen. But this is what we know, that God has lavished his love on us and we are called the children of God. And that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. You understand that, right? The reason that we get mocked, persecuted, even killed for our faith being Christians is because the world does not know our God. May they come to know him. May they come to see him. May they come to understand this great love that we have in him. Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. All who have this hope in him purify themselves just as he is pure. Amen. Amen. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.lauralynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.